Hey everyone, today we're going to be working on the Flamingo tambourine, and you can also use this tutorial if you have the Flamingo tote bag. Everybody should have gotten 3 paintbrushes, a flat, a round, and a fine line brush, your pre-sketched tambourine, and your palette with all of your 10 colors. Feel free to put your colors in your palette, or you can leave them in the little cups that I sent you or delivered, and then just use the palette for mixing. It's also going to be helpful to have a little stack of paper towels, like 2 or 3 paper towels just folded up so you can rinse your brush out, and a clean cup of water. Mardi Gras cups work perfect for that. So let's just get right to it. I'm gonna go ahead and use my round brush, this one right here, but you could also use the flat brush. I just include 2 so you can kind of use whichever one it is that you feel most comfortable with. I find myself using the round brush more unless there's a lot of straight lines and little flat places to get into. So we're going to go ahead and start with that kind of Pepto pink color, and we're going to base in our whole flamingo. So you're going to do everything that is sort of pink, so like all the body. The only thing we're not going to be touching are the beak and eye. So let's get to it. If you're finding that your paint is not covering the way that you would like it to, don't worry. This is just our first layer base coat, so it doesn't have to be as opaque as you'd think. Also, this is a buildable painting, and that's the way I do a lot of my paintings. They're a lot of layers, so this is just like a jumping off point, just kind of a base to lay down some color, and then if you feel like you need to put another layer on, once you finish the first coat, you can go back and fill in areas that you feel you would like to be a little bit more opaque. And you're going to want to turn your tambourine around, or your tote bag or canvas or whatever you have, so that it's going to be a little easier for you to get to the places that you need to. Today we're going to do just like a traditional flamingo painting. If you happen to be able to drop into one of the classes, sometimes I mix it up a little bit. The last class we did kind of a splatter technique, which was a lot of fun, but I think this is also a great way to do your flamingo. I'm not really being too careful with how I put down the paint. Just in those few little flick sections where we have the feathers that are going to be coming up, I'm just doing a normal type of pressure when I put the brush down onto the tambourine, but then when I come in to the feather area, you gently lift up and decrease the pressure on your brush so you get that nice little airiness of the feathers. All right, there we go. I'm going to do a little bit more around the head area, and I might come back to the body and just fill in a few spaces that I feel like need a little extra paint. And don't worry about being like making sure your strokes are super smooth. We like to see that texture. It kind of adds to the painting. So don't worry about that at all. All right. While we're waiting for that first pink layer to dry, let's go ahead and dive into this beak, because that's going to be probably the most intricate part of the painting altogether. I'm gonna pull up my reference really quick. Okay, so this is the biggest focal part of your flamingo, and I want to give you a little quick reference as to what I'm working off of. So I just pulled up a picture of a flamingo, like not a painting picture, just a real life picture, to give you an idea of what I'm kind of referencing. So we want to try and make this beak and eye area look as realistic as possible to really showcase our beautiful flamingo. So first we're going to start out by, and I'm just going to use the small brush for this whole section. It'll just end up being easier. We're going to start with the white, and we're just going to do everything in this top area white. We're not going to paint inside the eyeball, but we are going to paint around that eyeball. And this eyeball area is going to get a lot of attention. We're going to layer a lot of different colors on there so that we can get as realistic look as possible. And it's going to just really make a huge difference in your final painting. So don't worry about going over the drawing that I made. You can see it on the back side, so you'll at least have a point of reference. If you want to, and I certainly do, just so that I don't lose this particular spot, because this is kind of an important little area where his nostril is. I kind of go around that area just so that I can see it later. Whoop, almost dipped into the black. We're not ready for that yet. So we're going to paint this whole area in white first. And don't be too particular about that zigzaggy area. That's where the black is going to come into the white, and we don't really have to worry about that right now too in depth, because we're going to drag that black into the white so you get that cool blending of the beak. All right. Oh, my picture went away. Alrighty. Now let's jump down to the black section. So you're gonna just fill it in all black. And then we're gonna come back later and add some highlights to that when we start the finishing touches of our painting. Okay. And remember where I put that little nostril? I'm going to fill him in, just kind of press the paint in and then pull up that line. And then we're going to do the same thing with the beak. We're going to just kind of pull that line up and just let it be really organic with how the little zigzags come into the beak area, the white part of the beak area. If you're not 100% on how your ziggy-zaggy section is looking, you can always come back with paint, let it dry, paint over it, adjust as you feel fit. Alright. I kind of lost that little center line area, so we're going to flip that over and get a general idea of where that line is coming from. So it's going to be about halfway down between, on the back section, between where the eye starts and the little chin begins, and then we're going to come out and then pull down. So it's going to be approximately right here. I can kind of see it a little bit through that white paint. We're going to pull out and then just go down. All right. She's already kind of coming to life. All right, while we're at it, we can go ahead and add in that yellow eyeball while things are kind of drying. And that is just kind of a roundy oval. And don't worry about going over the pupil. We're going to bring that back in a little bit later. And I just like to kind of press the paint in a little bit sometimes. Get it to be the consistency, thickness, opacity that I want. All right, we're looking pretty good so far. I think we can kind of bounce back to our main bird. So let me flip back to my reference picture, and we're going to start bringing in some different tones. And I want to bring in that pretty coral color. And we're just kind of gonna just blend it in. Don't be too specific. I want a little bit around the eye. Oops. See, I've already kind of messed up a little bit, but that's all right because I can kind of go back and fix that. And you can always rinse your brush out, and then with your clean, damp brush, just kind of clean up that edge a little bit so that you can come back and bring that white all the way around again. Well, see, I mess up sometimes too, but nothing is gonna turn out so bad that you can't fix it. So just kind of pressing the paint in and deciding where I want it to go. This is a really organic kind of color combination, and like the way that we put it down, we're not going to be too specific. I like when it's more organic or a little less particular. We're not really going to worry about seeing all of the feathers or anything like that. We're just gonna kind of make them be implied. Alright. I'm just kind of putting that coral color wherever I kind of feel like the tone of the feathers going to be kind of changing. I'm going to bring those bottom feathers up into the neck, and then over here, and just kind of flick it out, starting in the center and just like flick it out. And you'll see these feathers down here. So I have some of them where they're coming up, some of them where they're coming like out into the body, and some that are going down and curling up. So we'll just pick a point and just pull it out, pull that paint out, and just create some feathers. And then do the same at the bottom where you're just kind of pull that paint down. Maybe do like a little zigzag if you feel like it. And then right here I have a little zigzaggy. You can do that too. She's really starting to come together. And let's start adding some of this beige color. And we're going to take that beige color, and not only are we going to put it into the body area, but we're also going to develop some depth in the beak area as well. So let's go ahead and start in the beak area, and then we'll go back to the body, give it a little chance to dry. So I want some of this, I'm going to flip them over so that I don't drag my hand through it, but I'm going to bring some of that beige around the eyeball, and I think I'll wait for that to dry a little bit, but also down the beak. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit, brings a little bit more white into it so it's not so drastic. Again, this is not like a science on exactly how it should be. We're just pulling some of that color in just to give it some depth. And I'll put a little bit of that beige down here. And you can just kind of rub it in. And then I'm going to pull that up and around the eye. You have to have a little bit of a steady hand. There we go. Bring some of that white back over here. The one that we kind of smashed away with the coral. I'm just kind of cleaning up those edges a little bit with that fine brush. And then I'll pop a little bit more white in there because I felt like that's a little dark. All right. Looking pretty good. So far, so good. And I'll put this close so you can see. It's just very subtle. We're just trying to create some depth with that other color. All right. Now we're going to bring some of that beige color in to our pelican, our flamingo. And just hit some highlight colors, some highlighted areas rather. So I'm just gonna put a little swipe up here, a couple swipes maybe, and maybe just like a couple around the eye and on the back of the head. And I think I'm gonna bring some of that pink back in. I don't like this brush very much. There we go. And down the back of the neck, we're going to just hit it in a couple of spots. And then to the inside of the neck. Give him a couple little swipes, and we're really not being specific. We're just kind of feeling like where we want to put it. And if you want to follow exactly where I'm putting the lines, then by all means. But this is your painting, so we want it to be you. And I'm going to bring just a couple swipes up where our feathers are. So decide where your feathers are going to be, and just bring some of that color up. And then also down here. Our bird's kind of looking a little crazy, but that's all right. We're just building that color up. All right. So we did the Pepto Pink, and now we want to deepen that Pepto Pink. So we're going to pull some to the center. Probably like 2 parts pink, 1 part red. I think that'll be a good jump up in tone. If you feel like it's a little bit dark, I think I like more of like a raspberry red. And I'll just bring in a little bit more of that, just a little bit more of the light pink, I think, and then that'll be just about right. I think that's Good. So we're going to come back in and build some more layers of color. Just kind of bold strokes. And I know you're going to feel like you're kind of going over what you already painted. Whoop, I dipped in the wrong one, but that's okay. See, because it feels fine to me with that. But like I said, it's going to feel like you're painting over what you've already done. But that's kind of what we're doing here. We're just kind of building layers and figuring out what we like. And then back into the feathers. So more, and see how it kind of like blends out that beige a little bit, kind of softens it. I don't mind that at all. I might have to just mix up a little bit more because I just didn't do enough. Sometimes that happens. I think it kind of came into the beak a little bit. That's all right. We can paint over that, adjust it, and it'll be fine. However, right there, I'm just gonna want to pull that out. All right, she's really starting to come together. All right, I'm going to let this dry a little bit before we bring in a few more colors. And we'll start focusing back on that eyeball. I'm going to get my small brush again. And I'm going to take a little bit of the orange, just a little bit, and then the tiniest amount of black, like literally just a speck, because I want to make kind of a brownish. See, and that was too much black, but we've learned. We'll figure this out. If you feel like you went too dark, like I just did, rinse your brush out and just add some more orange until it comes up to a good, like a kind of a light baby poopy kind of brown, which is, sounds gross, but that's the color we need. All right. So this is our kind of baby poopy brown. And what we're going to do with it is take your brush, rinse it out so you have a clean brush. And you're going to just load it up. And you're going to go around the outside of that yellow area. Make it like kind of a line around. And then rinse your brush out quickly and pick up some of that yellow again. And we're just gonna kind of blend them together we really want to have that cool gradation of the like brownish to the yellow. And if you need to pick up some more of the brown, then grab it and there. And then if you feel like you've lost some of your yellow in the center, just come back in and drop some more in there. There. Feeling good about that. This eyeball's looking pretty good. Do a little close-up. See how we have a little bit of like a gradation going from the outside to the inside. We don't mind having some of that brown like hard edge around the outside, because we're also going to come in with a black line, and we can go ahead and do that right now. So with your fine line brush, I'm going to suggest to put a little black in the center, and you're going to want to water it down just a little bit, just to loosen it up some. You don't want it to be really watery, just a little bit. And this is a time where it's going to take like major focus and like a steady hand, because we're going to go all the way around the edge of this eyeball. And once you do the black line, I want to pick up a little bit more of that brown again and just kind of try and blend that together just at the edge, just so that the black's not like a super harsh line against the yellow. And don't overwork it. Like I feel like I need to clean up around like this edge a little bit, but I don't want to overdo it. So I'm just going to let it dry a little bit, because if you let it dry a little bit and then try and clean it up, it's going to be a lot easier to do. And it's going to be a lot cleaner. Since I got the small brush, I'm going to go ahead and come and adjust this where I messed it up. Clean up that beak. All right. All right, now we're really going to start bringing the color into the beak. Go back to my original piece. Here we go. Alright, I'm going to use the small brush again, and I'm just going to bring some of that orange in, like straight orange, and just kind of work it in. Don't worry about going over the black. And the orange is kind of a translucent color. So we're just kind of working that in a little bit. You still want to see some of that white on the bottom. And we want to do a little bit across the top part. And I'm just kind of rubbing it back and forth into the canvas. Just a small amount at a time. There we go. And if you feel like you did too much, you can always come back with a little bit of that beige and a little bit of white if you need to, and tone it down. And then I'm going to take a little more of that orange and come up to the top part of the beak. And just bring some of that color in to the top part. And if you just kind of rub it in, you're not gonna it's gonna feel like it's not too overpowering. And now I'm coming back with a little bit more because I feel like I want it to be a little bit darker towards the black line. And I'm also going to bring in some of that coral color, just a little bit. I don't like that very much, but I'm going to water it down just a little bit. So we have a little bit of that coral color, but I think the orange works much nicer by itself. So we might scrap that coral color idea, but it's not bad. A little bit more. And now I'm going to just kind of press it in. A little bit more at the top. There we go. Feeling good about that. So if we look at our flamingo bill, bring in the photo. So there's a lot of different tones in that, where the brown, or it's kind of more natural, and then the bright white and the beige, and then that orangey coral. So I don't mind using some of this brown. I water it down a little bit. And just kind of working it in around the edges. So like maybe where the eye comes around, and we do want to bring some of that brown around where the eye is, kind of give him his little lines and folds. Just work a little bit of that brown in. It's very subtle, but it's going to make a huge difference in the realism of your flamingo. I want to bring a little bit more of that brown in, and a kind of a fuller strength, and really get those lines in around the eyeball. We really want this to pop. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. We're just bringing some of that brown in around the edge. really coming together. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and drop that pupil in. So you're gonna use your small brush. You're gonna wanna load it up with a decent amount of paint and then just make like a polka dot. There we go. There's your little pupil. Man, it just came to life. It's looking pretty great. All right, I'm going to go back to that round brush and start to bring in some of this more like hot pink color that I gave you. So you got that hot pink, and we're just gonna, just like we did before, just pull in some more color. Like I want to have some maybe up here with some of that pink. I just want them to really pop off. And at this point, because we're kind of towards the finishing steps of our project, if you want to have some of those paint strokes really like show off, it's going to kind of enhance the feather kind of feel of the I keep wanting to call it a pelican. It's a flamingo. We really want it to look painted. I'm going to start bringing some of those feathers in. And if you want to rub the paint in sometimes, where it's not necessarily like a stroke, but you're just kind of laying down some of that color, pressing it in. We really want to work all of those colors in. So like if you feel like maybe a little bit more of the orange, why not bring it some of that like underneath, just to give it a little bit of a pop. There really isn't a right or wrong way to do this. And if you want to bring some more of that original pink back in, pick that up and just kind of give it a couple swipes here and there, and like there really is no right or wrong way to do this. All right, now we're getting to the last little bit where we're going to bring in some of our highlights and I want to do that with some white. I'm going to go ahead and use my small brush. I think I want to bring that white around, and I want to just like water it down a little bit. Mine's getting a little dried up because I have the fan on in here, so it's not flowing as nicely as I would like it to. Let's see. All right, so we got our white, and we're just gonna like start making some highlight spots. Well, first let's go ahead and bring in, since his pupil is probably drying pretty good, or at least has like a little layer of on it, I'm gonna pop in a little light speck. And then maybe one more little teeny tiny speck. I'll show you what that looks like up close. So that's just a little light speck of where like the light's going to be hitting his eyes, like a little glisten glimmer. And then we're going to hit some, just a little, lightest little, that was too much. I was trying to have a really light touch, but it's all right. We're going to just take and clean our brush out. Go back in there and just like kind of pull it out. Now I have to go back and fix it. So I'm going to bring in some of that brown and tone it down. There we go. Go get our white again. Let's kind of start over a little bit. Maybe a little dot and a dash. And then by his forehead, another like dash and a dot. Bring in a couple little swipes in his beak. Maybe a swipe on his head and then up. Like that's pretty aggressive stroke, but I'm gonna go with it because why not? And then a little highlight stroke here. Maybe on the inside of there. Maybe a couple of little spots on his neck. And now I'm really gonna attack this and be very aggressive with the feather situation. So I want a decent amount of paint on my paintbrush, and you want it to be a little bit watered down so that you have a nice, that'll flow nicely. So I'm going to do like a crazy like feather zigzag to highlight the top of all of those feathers. And I'm just going to attack it. I'm just going to go for it. You want to make sure you have enough paint on your brush. That's the trick. There we go. And then in that area, I'm really defining the lines that we kind of put in there at the beginning. And then one last thing, I'm going to bring in some shadow and some low lights, and I'm going to take some of that black, pull it into the center, clean my brush out, and then bring in a good amount of white, and we're going to make that like a medium gray. That's good. So this medium gray color. Rinse your brush out. And then we're gonna come in under his chin. So we're pretending that the light's coming from this direction, right? So like light, 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 light. And then your shadows are going to be the opposite side of that line. So like shadow, shadow. And then whatever's kind of like underneath that hit of brightness. So we could even bring some in here if we wanted to, but I think I'm just going to stick with what we got going on in the body. And just be very careful. Like steady hand again. Got some shadow happening there. And then right here. A little under his chin, under his beak. Let's go ahead and extend this line to come a little under his beak too. And very lightly down. Just so ever so slightly. And then we're going to bring some of this gray into the bottom section. And highlight the black area so that we can really define that beak. And we're going to just kind of bring some of that up. Just a couple little lines to really define that beak. All right, I feel pretty good about this guy. It's looking pretty great. If you feel like still like you want some more color, bring some of that coral back in. Just kind of like some big, bold swipes. If you want him to have more feathers up top, like I think he could have a few more feathers up here. Just do a bold zigzag. All right, there's some more feathers. All right, I think he's done. So you'll notice that I gave you this kind of like milky color, like clearish milky color. That is your clear coat. And it's just another extra layer of protection for your painting. So once it is completely dry, which is probably going to be about 30 minutes, or you can just wait till the next day, you're going to want to, and I'll use the one that was already done. This was one that we did last week, just for the sake of showing you how to put that clear coat on. You're going to take and just come up to the edge of where your paint is and cover the whole section that you have painted on. You don't need to cover the whole tambourine itself, but I think if you do, it's not going to hurt it. But we really want that painting to pop off. So just a little bit over the edge of that. And it's really going to bring those colors to life, and it's going to help protect your painting if you decide you want to use it. Make music with it, start a band, whatever. So then you're going to go ahead and wait for it to dry completely and display it however you want. Put it on a shelf, put it on a wall, play it. Hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed your painting time. I'll catch you later.